Welcome to another lesson in Basic Economics for Retail Management. In today's lesson, we're going to look at market supply and demand. Now, this is going to be a very simple lesson, but going to be very meaningful for those who want to understand about supply and demand in the market, more so for people who are in the retail business. Now, we're going to start straight away. What is demand all about? Now, the law of demand says there's an inverse relationship between the price of a good and the quantity buyers are willing to purchase in a defined time periods, ceteris paribus. Now, don't worry too much about this. Basically, what it means, when prices go up, the quantity demanded comes down, and the reverse is also true. If the prices come down, people demand more quantities of any particular good over a period of time. That's what the law of demand says. Basically, it depicts the relationship between price and quantity demanded. That's all about law of demand. We proceed. Now, how does a demand curve looks like? Now, to draw a demand curve, you just have to look at a schedule like this, where you plot in the prices of a particular good and the quantity demanded. Here, of course, is all hypothetical. We just put in some guess figures. And you can see it's about price of compact disc. Just to tell you that, whether it's a generation ago, whatever product that you use, the principles are the same. Now, this schedule says, as you can see from this schedule, when the price is 20 ringgit, the total quantity demanded in the market is 4 units. When the price goes down to 15 ringgit or $15, the quantity demanded in the entire market. The market could be 2 persons, 3 persons, 4 persons, as many persons in a market that we define. In this case, in our example, we just say 6. And when the prices go down further, the quantity demanded increase. And of course, at $5, the quantity demanded is 60. So what can we see here? When the prices goes down, the quantity demanded is greater. Now, when you plot all this, actually we only need 2 points to plot a line or graph. In this case, is a sloping downward curve. So point A is price 20, quantity 4. Now, for simplicity, what we normally do when we want to show a demand curve, we might just show a straight line like this. I might just show a straight line like this and put a symbol like this demand. Now, of course, in real life, it won't be a straight line like this, but it will be a downward slope like this. But for simplicity, we can just depict a straight line like this. Now another thing, you must know the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. You see, change in quantity demanded and change in demand. I'm going to go back to the previous graph. Now, whenever the price changes, any movement along the demand curve, when prices goes down to 15, the quantity demanded has increased from 4 units to 6 units. Any movement along the demand curve is known as change in quantity demanded. Change in quantity demanded. Change in quantity demanded. Now, what does the change in demand means? Now, remember, we used the term ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus means all other factors like income is constant. But what happens when a person the market experiences an increase in wealth or increase in income? What we'll realize, you'll know that each price people are willing to demand more. It could be here. It could be here. At each price, it could be here. It could be here. Now, what happens here? The entire demand curve shifts. I'm not drawing to perfection. What you can see, the entire demand curve has shifted. Now this is what we call a shift in demand. If the overall income in a particular market, okay, has dropped, then we can see a leftward shift, because at each price now people demand less. You can plot another demand curve. So what causes the shift? Okay, we're going to go here. It's the non-price determinants. We know, let's say this is the original demand curve. Okay, let's say this is the original demand curve. Any movement because of change in price will move along the same demand curve. But any movement in the non-price determinants, okay, like the number of buyers in the market, let's say the population increase, the number of buyers is increased, then at each price the quantity demanded will be greater. Same thing with taste and preferences. Okay, it could be fashion clothes, it could be apparels, it could be home appliances, anything that you can think of, any product. Sometimes a change in the taste and preferences. We can see how even in automobiles, from the big gas guzzling cars, today we have the smaller cars. Now the other thing I just spoke about is income. Okay, you know, income, when income increases, everybody's wealth is increased. At each price people may demand more. Okay, now you could take this, a number of movies you watch. Let's say at 10 ringgit you want to watch movies maybe 8 times a year. But let's say your income is double, you might even watch 16 times a year. So at each price, when you plot the new, let's say, points, the quantity that you demand with your increased income, that becomes a new demand curve. And that we say is a shift in demand. Now, of course, expectations of consumers very important. Now, the classic example I can give you here is, do you remember the time, some point in time last year, maybe 2 years ago, on Wednesdays, the government used to make an announcement whether the price of petrol is going to go up or down. The minute, when they know the price is going to go up tomorrow, people will queue up in the petrol kiosk station. Okay, because they know the price is going to go up, they start demanding more. At each price, they start demanding more, and that causes a shift in demand. Okay, so these expectations of consumers, it could be the real estate. If people expect prices of houses to go up in the future, they'll start purchasing now. If they expect prices of houses to come down in the future, they will spend or they'll demand less now. Okay, price of related goods. This is very interesting. Now, when you talk about related goods, there are two types of related goods. One we call substitutes. The other we call complementary goods. Okay, substitutes are those, of course, as the name suggests, you can substitute a product or a service. For example, a classic example would be bus services and LRT services. They are substitutes. Now, what will happen? Suppose you're using the LRT services now. They've increased the price of LRT services. Now, more people will start using the bus services. Okay, and what will happen for the demand curve for the bus services? They'll start shifting to the right. Okay, now it can shift left or right depending on the situation. You just have to think about it. Now, substitutes, you know what it is. Complementary means if you use a particular product, you have to use another product. Okay, if you're using camera, you have to use another product called memory stick. Otherwise, you won't be able to take pictures, right? These kind of products are called complementary goods. Maybe another example. Okay, golf ball and green fees. You're going to play golf, you have to pay green fees. Okay, so when you're playing golf, of course, there will be a demand for golf balls. So these are type of complementary. Now, what happens when the green fees goes up? Now, there'll be less people playing golf and there'll be less demand for golf balls. So you can see, sometimes when the green fees goes up, the demand for golf balls now will take a leftward shift. It will go around this way. Okay, so that's what we mean by shift in demand curve, left or right. Now, we come to supply. Now, if there was an inverse relationship in the law of demand, there is a positive relationship or direct relationship between price of a good and the quantities sellers are willing to offer for sale, again in a defined period of time, Ketri Paribu. What does it mean? Now very simply it means, normally what it means, when prices increase, the more people want to supply goods. Okay? And of course, when you say direct relationship, when the prices come down, there are less people who are supplying these goods. So it comes down. So this is what we call a direct relationship. Now, how to plot this graph? Again, you can use a schedule like this. Okay, you can see as the price increases, the quantity supplied increases. So when you plot on a graph, you get an upward sloping curve like this. You just plot these points here, you will get the graph like this. So a supply curve is from a low left to a high right. Now for simplicity in the future, we just point it like this. Okay, you get upward sloping graph. Now, a lot of times, okay, our participants and of them ask, why should it be when the prices goes up, people want to offer more? Now, this has got to do something with the cost structure. Okay, all the suppliers, they don't have a similar cost structure. Some are more efficient and some are less efficient. Some can produce at a lower cost, some will be producing at a higher cost. Of course, when you offer a higher price, even the less efficient producers can come and supply in the market. Do you see this? And that's why whenever the price increases, more people will come to offer their products. Okay, so that's why you have a upward sloping supply curve. Interesting. Okay, again, there's a difference between change in quantity supplied, which is a movement against price on the same demand curve. Anytime there's a movement in the price, you'll see there's a movement along the demand curve. Okay, but what is a shift in supply? This is when the entire supply curve shifts left or right. And what can cause this? The supply curve to shift is a non-price determinant again. If price means it'll move along the supply curve. Now let's look at it. You see, of course, when the number of sellers increase at each price, okay, there's more quantity supplied because the number of suppliers have increased. Technology. With technology, you can produce let's say more quantity with the same amount of resources. So technology will shift the supply curve to the right. What about resource prices? Okay, whether it's land, labor, capital, if the labor becomes cheaper, you can produce more. Just like raw materials. Huh? Okay, if the price of raw materials is less, the supply curve will shift to the right. But if the price of raw materials increase, then you'll find a leftward shape. It could be something like this. Okay, at each price now, can you see this? The less quantity supplied. At each price now, less quantity supplied. So it can be also a leftward shift depending on the scenario that we are experiencing. It could be expectation of producers. Okay, if the producers or the suppliers know the prices are going to increase in the future, they'll start building. Let's say we are talking about properties. They'll start building more properties today because they know that they're going to fetch a very good price in the future. Okay, they start supplying more at current times. So expectations of producers are also important. But if they think the prices are going to be damned in the future, they start supplying less now itself. Okay? So this expectation of producers can cause a supply curve to shift left or right. Now, prices are other goods the firm can produce. Now, within the same firm, like a pharmaceutical firm like Pfizer, they can produce a product like Viagra, which they were actually producing Viagra. But now, maybe the Pfizer vaccines are fetching a better price and for better profit margin. So they'll start supplying more of the vaccines and less of the Viagra now. So that, let's say, the vaccines can take a rightward shift. In the case of Viagra, it will take a leftward shift. So you can see, these are things that can cause a shift in the supply curve. Now, we are coming to the important question. Okay. How are prices determine the market? Okay. Very simple. It's the intersection of the forces of supply and demand, or the intersection of the supply curve and the demand curve. When you cross these two graphs, this point here at the intersection between the supply curve and demand curve is called the equilibrium point. This will become the equilibrium price, and this will become the equilibrium quantity. Now, when we say equilibrium, okay, the number of people are willing to pay for this quantity of goods at this price and the number of people are willing to sell at this price are equal. Okay, so there will be no surplus or no shortage. Now, if you look at this graph, why it can't be at 90 ringgit or $90? Because at $90, people are only demanding at what, 1,000 units. Okay, but the people are willing to supply. Now, remember this, at a very high price, even inefficient producers can come into the market. It will be well above their what you call cost of production. So you'll have definitely more people supplying. And you see at this 90 ringgit, about 3,000 units are being supplied. But not everything can be sold, because the quantity demanded is only 1,000, but the quantity supplied is 3,000. So it cannot be here. So there will be a pressure for it to go to the equilibrium point. You see, it goes here. Now, why it can't be at 30 ringgit? At 30 ringgit, wow, it's so cheap. A lot of people wanted to demand this product. You can see the demand now is about 3,000 units. But on the other hand, at this very low price, the inefficient producers cannot come and supply the product. So there will be less supply. There's only 1,000 units that are being supplied. In this circumstance, we have a situation of shortage. Shortage means the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. So you can see there's a pressure to go back to the equilibrium point. When it comes here, okay, at 60 ringgit, the people are willing to sell are supplying at 2,000 units, and the people who are demanding the product is also at 2,000 units. It all clears off. This is where the market equilibrium is set up. Okay, so it will give you an indication in any business that you are, how to determine how the prices will be set in the market. Is the intersection between the supply curve and the demand curve. Okay, and where they intersect is the equilibrium point. Okay, one last bonus thing that we need to know with this. Okay, we're going to take a very common sense approach to this, to see the movement of price. For this, I'm going to go show you something like this. Okay, now, I'm just going to ask you a question. You're going to tell me whether the supply curve going to move or the demand curve going to move. Okay, let's say this is the supply of durians, and this is the demand for durians. Okay, and this is the price, equilibrium price now. Now forgive me if my sketching is a bit weak. Now suppose they have found out, okay, if you eat durians, you can prevent anyone from catching this COVID-19 or contracting the disease. Okay, they found out if you consume durians, you can prevent COVID-19. What do you think will happen to the demand for durians? Or you tell me first, whether the supply curve will move first or demand curve will move first? Yes, you are right. It's the demand curve that will be shifting first. Okay, now what will happen to the price of durians? If this is the original demand curve, you can find, okay, the price of durian is going to go up. Of course, the new equilibrium quantity will be here. Okay, so the important thing, if you want to know the movement of price, you need to know which graph is or which curve is going to move first, the supply curve or demand curve. Now, I'm going to give you another example. Okay. Let's say this is the equilibrium price for low-cost houses or low-cost housing. Now, it applies to any product. Okay, or it can be cars or whatever it is. Okay, this is the equivalent point. Okay, let's take, we just take housing. I'm just going to give you an example. Now what happens? The prices of cement, steel and everything has gone down. Okay, which graph will move first, the demand or the supply curve? You are right, the supply curve, because why? Now the suppliers, their cost of production has gone down. So each price they can supply more of these houses. So the supply curve will shift to the right. So what will happen to the prices of low cost houses now? They will tend to drop. Okay, this will be original price. The price comes down. This was the original quantity. Okay, and this is the new quantity demanded, or the new equilibrium. Huh? See, equilibrium quantity has shifted to the right, equilibrium prices come down. So whenever you get a situation like this, you want to know how prices are moving. First of all, use your common sense. That's all we need. Okay, to determine whether the demand curve is going to move or the supply curve is going to move. Eventually both will move, but you need to determine which will move first, at least in the short run. Okay, once you know that, all right, you'll be able to see, you just plot it on this graph, you know how the prices are going to move. With that, we have completed today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. Till we meet again, thank you.